Today's guest brainwashes millionaires to become billionaires. And all I did in that session was just remove one limiting belief from his mind. You want to guess how much money he made in the next 10 days?
How much?
$1.2 million.
A shy boy growing up in the UK, he sold candy in school to afford his first PlayStation before dropping out of college to pursue entrepreneurship.
Can you hypnotize me to forget about my ex? I asked her after, how do you feel now when you think about him? And she just said, think about who?
But after 6 failed businesses, he realized the problem was not his work ethic, it was the mental programming that made him believe he couldn't succeed.
Anything that is said to you from somebody you perceive as an authority is going to essentially become part of your identity. The most damaging sentence a parent can say to their child is,
in this episode, we'll break down the exact blueprint he uses to hypnotize billionaires, reveal how your algorithm is already putting you into a trance, and question if he's able to rewire your mind for success, then what are the ways the world is programming you to fail? Do you think you could hypnotize me to have a heart attack?
If you want to know the real answer, most likely yes.
Ebrahim Turner, welcome to the Jack Neel Podcast.
Good to be here, Jack.
Yeah, a good place to start here. Ebrahim, you've hypnotized billionaires, celebrities, professional athletes to increase their income, become more magnetic, and push their body to its physical limits. What do you think most people misunderstand about hypnosis?
So I'd say, what even is hypnosis? Because if you imagine a hypnotist, maybe you've seen, a guy with a swinging pocket watch standing in front of somebody. And a lot of people think that is hypnosis. And there is some truth to that, but it's not the reality of what's actually going to hypnotize you. So to define it first, all hypnosis is just a state of focused relaxation. So I'm a hypnotist, so I speak to people's conscious minds and their subconscious minds. So I get them to essentially focus on what I'm saying so that I can do suggestions to change who they are or change their identity, right? So if you imagine a hypnotist swinging a watch, a lot of people will think, well, that's not real. How can that actually happen? If we dive into what's actually going on there, the idea is that I'm taking the focus of your eyes. And when I do that, it's called an eye fascination. I'll get onto what that actually means later. But I'm essentially able to temporarily control you. Now, if I'm using hypnosis in a positive way, which of course I do, it's going to influence you to make better changes in your life. So first of all, that's what hypnosis actually is and how it works. It's essentially, though, just a shortcut. It's a shortcut to change something inside of you. And a way of thinking about this is, imagine you go on a first date and you think back to one of the best first dates you've ever had. You're with a guy or a girl and you go to some restaurant or some bar and you sit down together and immediately you lock eyes. So you're already in a kind of trance, right? Time kind of disappears. You're feeling a lot of positive emotions. You're completely focused on one another. It's like the outside world just disappears and you're in this moment. And then as time goes by and the date ends, when you leave, you don't remember who your server was. You don't remember what music was playing. You don't even remember any of the details of the night except that you had an amazing time. So that really is a trance. That is a state of hypnosis. And so what a lot of people don't realize is that they're actually in a trance more often than not. So a lot of people come to me and say, oh, I can't be hypnotized. It's just they don't understand that they're already hypnotized. So my job is, first of all, to dehypnotize people, to help them get out of the trance or the limiting beliefs or the fears that are running their life so that they can become free. And then once we do that, then we can start making the changes.
And I guess, what can you actually hypnotize someone to do? Like, imagine the viewer listening to this podcast listens to it fully, takes your instructions. Like, what are the ways in which they would be able to change their life potentially?
So one of the biggest things people initially come to me for is they want to have more success, right? And they want to make more money. Now, you might say, how can you hypnotize yourself to make more money? It's actually really easy, because if you think about when it comes to success, really all that comes down to is, do you believe you're deserving of that success? Do you have the confidence to go after that success? So what a lot of people have is an image in their mind of all of the reasons why they cannot get to the next level. Maybe I don't have the time. Maybe I procrastinate. Maybe people will judge me. These are essentially examples of, I call them really matrix programs, right? And if you think about the mind like a computer, which I'll use that analogy as we go out through this podcast, it's really just your mind has been programmed by people who don't necessarily have your best interests at heart. Not that it's done intentionally, but it's what happens. So the success is oftentimes the main reason people come in. But like one of my mentors always says, success without fulfillment is the ultimate failure. So what people really want is actually just to feel good, right? Fundamentally, people just want to feel good, but they will go after that success in order to get an emotion. Now, everything we do is for an emotion. So if we can change our thoughts and we can change our emotions, then having the success just becomes a natural byproduct of this, right? I had a guy come to me a few months ago. He found me on Instagram. I make these 2-minute sort of hypnosis reels where I just hypnotize people through the screen. And he comes in, he's making like 30 grand a month, and he does those 2-minute reels. And the next day he makes 50 grand. Now, you might just go, coincidence, right? I would say the same thing. But to him, he was like, no, I feel like something's changed. So he booked a session with me. We did it. And he'd been making that same amount of money for 2 years straight. No matter what he did, more effort, more willpower, he wasn't able to break through. So we did the session. And all I did in that session was just remove one limiting belief from his mind. You want to guess how much money he made in the next 10 days?
How much?
$1.2 million, which was the equivalent of 2 years' income for him. Now, of course, that's amazing because he got to provide for his family more, he got to get a new home, buy his dream watch, take after his team and all of that. But what's really the thing that I'm more passionate about is who he then became and how he views the world. Now he sees himself as somebody completely different. It's like taking the limitless pill. When you feel unlimited, that's really what I love to use hypnosis for, because once you can kind of dissolve these boxes that were put in by society, government, education system, and realize that they're all just created by some guy at some point, everything just becomes possible.
Right. And I hear people talk about this concept as it relates to like manifestation or having an abundance mindset, that you just need to put yourself in a state and constantly remind yourself that you are more deserving and more capable than you perceive yourself to be. How would you differentiate like hypnosis from simply saying, I am the type of person to make $1 million in a day?
Yeah, the key is the belief. So what we're really talking about here is identity level change. This is very different to just kind of saying something. An identity is essentially just a set of beliefs that you hold about who you believe you are or who you believe you are not. Okay. So if you say an affirmation, that's great. That can be helpful. But if you imagine your subconscious, which is here, imagine there's this big filing cabinet and there's all of these like old files, like imagine it from like the 80s or something, right? And every time you have a thought, a file goes in. So if it's, I'm not going to be successful, or somebody said something to me, it will store a file. And we have about 80,000 thoughts a day. So every single time you have a thought, it's unconsciously storing a file in this filing cabinet. So if you say, I'm the type of person to make $1 million, a file will go in. But if there's 17 million other files saying the opposite, they're going to go like, that's bullshit. I don't believe that. That's why for most people, they don't really believe in manifestation. Now, the key differentiator here is all about the state that you go into. Okay. So state is everything. And when you are in a hypnotic state or a trance, or you can just think of it as a very relaxed, dreamlike state where your attention is fully focused right here, right now, that is where it's called, without getting too technical, like basically your neocortex, your critical faculty, the thinking part of your mind relaxes so that it can take new suggestions. Okay. When you're in that state, now if somebody tells you, or you tell yourself with a lot of certainty, I am the type of person who makes $1 million, or for me, I charge $1 million for XYZ, it's going to be like the equivalent of 1 million files because it's going in deep into the subconscious. So that's really the difference. The problem is that so many people are getting hypnotized unknowingly. So what does the average person do when they wake up in the morning? They go on their phone, right? Now they're either going to scroll on social media, or if they have a business, they're going to check their Slack or their email and start replying to stuff. That's going to put them in a reactive state, primarily driven by fear. So the first thing when you're in that programmable state in the morning is going to be based off of fear and reaction. Now, for a lot of people, this actually does create some success. This is where things get kind of a little bit nuanced. It's not to say that that's bad, because fear is a strong motivator, right? It'll get you moving. It's wired into us, but it's always going to have a limit. So that's really the difference. And that's why I just use hypnosis as a tool. It's simply just to influence our subconscious at the deepest level. Because when we do that, that's where it really only takes one time to create the change. And then you don't have to do it again and again.
And just to give people an idea of what hypnosis can be used for aside from money making, what is the most surprising outcome you've gotten through multiple hypnosis sessions, or what's the craziest thing you've seen happen through hypnosis?
One I did recently was with a fitness influencer, actually, in Marbella, and he basically wanted to try and break his bench press record. And so this is an interesting application because it's very physical, right? And he'd been training for 12 years, and he was basically at this, when you're training that much, even changing like 1 or 2 pounds is a very big difference, right? And he'd never been hypnotized before. And I sat him down, I got him into a trance, and all I did is he was just about to have a child, okay? And so I said to him in the hypnosis, when you push this weight, it's got to be like you're lifting it off your newborn child, okay? This is something called hysterical strength. Now, what hysterical strength is maybe you've heard about, a mother gaining the strength to like pull a car off her baby. Now, did she already have the strength before, or did she somehow just create it? Well, it was already obviously inside of her. It's just something changed in her wiring, right? When I did that with this guy, he pushed the most weight he'd ever pushed in his career. And so what that does is it's not just about pushing the weight or making the money or even losing weight. I had a guy come up to me at a Tony Robbins event at one of his high level ones, and I recognized him because he was on a video with Richard Bandler, and he got hypnotized by him. So I said, "Oh, cool! I recognize you from that video." And the guy was like really pissed off. He did not want to speak to me, and I was like, "Okay, like, well, what's up?" And he said, "Why do you want to know?" And I said, "Well, I'm a hypnotist." And he said, "Oh, well, then maybe you can solve my problem." I said, "What's your problem?" He said, "Losing weight. I can't stop eating sugar." And so he was annoyed because he wasn't able to do it. Anyway, when I started hypnotizing him, it became very clear that it wasn't really just about the weight loss. It came back to he was actually self-sabotaging himself, and actually even ended up having a heart surgery because he just didn't believe that he should actually be here due to some stuff that happened in his past. So anyway, 5 minutes, I made him hate sugar, love working out. I just went back into the event. I didn't think about it. And then 3 days later, he runs up to me with his trousers like loose. And I'm like, that doesn't even make sense. How can your trousers be loose in 3 days? His face is thin. And, you know, he's gone and done it. And so these aren't like crazy, shocking things, but the things that the average person struggles with for their entire life. And that's really the level I like to focus on. It's what are you actually dealing with today? Is it that you want to have more success? Is it that you want to find that relationship? Is it that you do want to make more money? And then apply it to that.
Has everyone been hypnotized their entire life?
First of all, we've defined what hypnosis is, right? Now, something I didn't say yet is that children are primarily in a state of hypnosis. So between the ages of 0 to 8, children can learn skills rapidly, learn to walk, pick up new languages. They're like sponges, right? They're always in the present moment. And then we kind of lose that as we get older. Their brain is very neuroplastic. So we actually start our existence in a hypnotic trance. And so we're always essentially going in and out of hypnosis. And the question is what are you being hypnotized for? In those formative years of 0 to 8, basically anything that is said to you from somebody you perceive as an authority is going to essentially become part of your identity. So as a child, who is the biggest authority in your life?
Your parents.
Yeah, right. So if your parents tell you, you're amazing, they give you confidence, they're supportive, they tell you that they love you, then you're going to have a certain set of beliefs around the world. But if your parents are not doing that, or they're dealing with their own stuff, then that's what you're going to take on. And actually, here's the crazy thing. It doesn't even matter if they're telling you things or not. You just pick it up naturally. So, you don't necessarily do what somebody tells you to do. You do what they do. right? So I don't know if you're going to have kids in the future, but a lot of parents, mess their kids up because they just don't understand themselves. And it's the same thing with everyone's parents, but that's how we learn and grow.
So you're saying that when someone is in a hypnotic state of trance and there's an authority figure involved, not only do they listen, do what that authority figure tells them to do, but they also mimic their behavior?
Absolutely.
I've never heard that before. That's really interesting.
This gets amplified when there are a group of people. So maybe you can look at the World Cup that happened recently, right? And you notice how in the crowd, there's this kind of herd behavior, this crowd behavior. You just act like the people around you. That's not really by choice. That is engineered, and it's a social effect. That's also a form of trance. Again, like that first date analogy I gave you, time kind of disappears. You don't really pay attention to surroundings and you're just completely focused in on one thing. So it's happening everywhere. And the reason why most people never even realize it's happening is because they're just unaware. And when you're in a trance, you usually don't realize you're in a trance. It kind of feels like this weird dreamlike feeling. So something that we could do if you want is I could actually hypnotize your audience to actually see what it feels like so that they can actually see if it works for them. I think that would be probably the best way to show it.
Do you want to do that right now? All right, so imagine you need financial advice and you ask your buddy who lives with his parents and regularly talks about how he just hit a parlay and has inside info about prediction markets. Like, why would you do that? This guy can't even manage his own money and you're asking him about investing? There's a reason you wouldn't ask someone broke to handle your finances. Just like there's a reason that Morgan & Morgan is America's largest injury law firm. Not all law firms are the same. Hire the wrong one and you might be beat before you even start. Morgan & Morgan has been fighting for the people for over 35 years. They've recovered over $30 billion for their clients. And hiring them is like hiring your own army to go into battle for you. They've got over 1,000 lawyers with 100 offices nationwide. If you're injured by someone else's negligence, you deserve to be paid. And their fee is free unless you win. So if you're ever injured, you can check out Morgan & Morgan. For more information, you can just go to forthepeople.com/Jack Neel and see if you have a case. Again, that's forthepeople.com/Jack Neel. But anyway, guys, back to the podcast.
I could actually hypnotize your audience.
Do you want to do that right now?
Yeah. So if your audience want to try hypnosis right now and they've never done it before, you just have to make sure you're not driving, operating any machinery, anything like that, just to get out the safety stuff. It's best to do it if you're seated or laying down. And there's only two things you're going to do. One is just get into a relaxed state. Two is follow the instructions I'm going to give to your mind. You want to try it along as well?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, cool.
I'll do it as well.
Cool. So you can just put your feet nice and flat, get into a comfortable state, and just take a deep breath in and out. Now, Jack's already in a trance because I can see his eyelids fluttering. So he's actually already in hypnosis. So good job. Take one more deep breath in and all the way out. Just exhale all of the air. Just let your body fully relax as you fully focus only on the words that I'm saying to you right now. Any thoughts that are in your head just float out of your mind like a cloud into the sky as you just enter this state of hypnosis. Just draw your attention to your eyelids. And as you draw your attention to your eyelids, notice that they get heavier. And as you imagine your eyelids getting heavier and heavier, you'll notice in a minute that they actually feel so heavy that they're stuck shut. And once you can feel this feeling and imagine them getting stuck shut, like yours are right now, you notice that the more you try to open them, the more stuck that they become. Just like that. And in a moment, I'm going to say the word sleep, and you're not going to go to sleep. You're going to go into a much deeper state of focused relaxation with one and sleep all the way down, just completely going 1,000 times deeper with every word that you hear as you drift more and more and more into this trance. And now, as you drift more into this trance, you're going to start to feel this space open up inside of you. It's like this good feeling starts swirling around your body. Like you could call it confidence, you could call it self-belief, something that makes you feel really excited, maybe something that's in the future that really excites you, that you bring right into this moment right now. And as you feel this feeling expand inside of your body, it's like a balloon filling up. It starts to make you feel better and stronger, more confident, more certain. Like everything just works out for you. Like any goal that you had, it's already done. And you actually see yourself at the end and finish line of that goal right now in this moment. And any hesitation that you used to have to this just goes away. All that resistance goes away and you see yourself already completing this. And if there was a dial of certainty of how certain you are that this goal is already done, it just dials all the way up from 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 out of 10. It's already done. It's already happened. And as you take one last deep breath in and out, when you open your eyes in a moment, you'll know exactly how this feels and that it's already done. Eyes open.
That was pretty effective.
You're actually very hypnotizable.
I know. It's such a... I thought that it would be harder to get me because I've had so many people hypnotize me on this show. But yeah, when you said my eyes were fluttering, I was like, shit, they do that very easily.
So just for the audience, if they've just done this for the first time, you might feel like strange, you might feel really good, you might feel kind of confused or out of it. However you feel is totally normal. Just let yourself just notice how you feel now compared to before. It's all about the feeling. So whatever you can notice, that's the difference that you've just created. How do you feel?
Feel great. Feel like I already achieved a goal. It's interesting. I want to understand, it's kind of a bad question right now because you did just hypnotize people, but what's a sign that someone is hypnotized about a particular thing in their life?
Usually it's when you can't stop thinking about something and you feel so connected to something and it's kind of going around in your mind again and again and again, because there's really a couple of different parts to what even creates a hypnotic state. Okay. So one is repetition. Okay. This is the first part. Now, if you hear something again and again, eventually you're going to probably just subscribe to that belief system. So whether it's a religion growing up, something your parents said, or how much success you should have, that's why people always say you should be careful about who you surround yourself with, right? So repetition is the first element of what creates somebody to be in a hypnotized state. The second thing is suggestion. So that's what we just did there. I gave you some new suggestions, and this is examples about your goals and how you feel about them. And in that hypnotizable state, because you were so relaxed, those suggestions are much more likely to go into your subconscious where they actually stick. Does that make sense?
Why?
Because your mind is no longer questioning them. So the mind is primarily where the critical faculty is, which is basically the thing that's judging, is this a threat? Is this not a threat? So you temporarily allow that guard to come down so that you can go. It's like a doorway. You basically just open that doorway inside of you. Now, the third part to this is emotion. Okay. Now, the stronger the emotion you feel, the deeper the hypnosis is going to be. And if we zoom out for a moment and you think about mass hypnosis, okay, think about what happened back in 2019. There was a virus that suddenly came about. And out of those three facets that I just told you, repetition, suggestion, and emotion, which one of those were applied during that time to make people believe that they should be extremely concerned about what was going on in the world at that time?
Would assume all of them.
Yeah. Think about what was happening on the news. You have to stay inside. If you go outside, people around you are going to die. You're going to make you feel bad about your grandparents or something like that. They're continuously suggesting these things. And ultimately, they're making you feel the strongest emotion, which is fear. And fear is ultimately how you can control someone. So that was how the world was hypnotized back at that time. So this is how it works on a mass scale. So the most important thing is just to focus on you and to focus on your own state in every single moment. Anytime you notice you're going into that state of fear, because you can also be hypnotized negatively, right? And a lot of people are. It's your own self-responsibility to get yourself back into a good state.
I think a good place that is relatable to people to understand this concept, like why does scrolling on social media hypnotize you?
If somebody is scrolling on social media, imagine a person walking down the street and they're on their phone. Now, if you were to look at that person and you imagine them right now, they're walking, they're looking at their phone, they're kind of hunched over, they're completely unaware of what's going on in the outside world. Somebody could just, well, I'm from London, somebody could just run right past them and steal their phone out of their hand, right? Which is what's happening every single day. So, what's actually going on inside of the phone? Well, inside of the phone, first of all, if you're on social media, you're seeing a constant stream of new suggestions, whether it's an ad, whether it's a post, it's a bright color, which gets your attention. One of the other main components of hypnosis of how to get somebody into trance that I didn't tell you yet is using something called a pattern interrupt or a shock induction, for example. So this is why you'll see ads come out with these crazy claims because it gets your attention for a moment. That moment where I go like that, that's immediately the gateway for you to go into a trance.
Hmm.
So it's constantly happening, giving you a new emotion. One is I watched a thing of a puppy and a kitten this morning, and the kitten was really scared, and the golden retriever puppy was just playing around with it until it got calmed, right? That put me in a positive state. And then imagine the next thing is something that's going on in the war in Iran that's now in a deeply fearful and negative state. And then the next thing might be something about something that happened with a family member, which makes you think, go to a completely different place. So it's constantly taking your attention, which remember, hypnosis is all about where your attention is going and where your focus is going and harvesting it. So it's completely, they spend trillions of dollars designing this technology to harvest your attention. You obviously know that. You understand how this works better than most people. But it all starts with how to get somebody into the trance, which is that initial part. Because once they're in the trance, you can essentially now do anything. This is why people will buy stuff from social media that they don't need. It's because they're in that in that trance, like very suggestible state. But it's so addictive because it's giving you that third component, the emotion. That's why people get so addicted to it, because it gives them something. It's like pulling that slot machine, and every single time you don't know what you're going to get, but you know you're going to feel something. It has all of those three components. Therefore, it's gonna become something that hypnotizes them.
One thing I can spot that's similar to hypnosis is like you'll see hypnosis videos on YouTube that have like flashing lights or like, I don't know, circles to kind of like put you in this trance state. And like if you're scrolling and your brightness is all the way up, each scroll is like a flash at your
Yeah.
face. Is there any other things like that? Like is sound important in getting people into trance?
For sure, yeah. So it's basically, we're getting now to the senses. So there's multiple different senses that we have, primarily visual, so what you can see, so that flashing light in that example. Then there's auditory, which is sound. That's another way of getting your attention, okay? There's kinesthetic, which just means feeling. So again, feeling the emotion. There's also gustatory, which is taste. There's also smell as well. You're not going to necessarily get smell, although you can get smell from it if you have that image in your mind strong enough. And taste can even happen as well. Do you want to do a quick test on taste? And I can
Yeah.
show you. So imagine you see a lemon on social media. Somebody's eating a lemon. You can test this right now. Imagine you have a lemon in your hand. Just
Right.
take your hand right now. Imagine there's a lemon. And anybody at home can try this as well if you want to see how this works. Now imagine you just take that lemon to your face and just imagine you're smelling the lemon. You can maybe smell that citrusy, sour smell familiar from a lemon. Now imagine that you squeeze that lemon right near your face, and imagine you put it to your mouth, and you put the lemon in your mouth. And now you squeeze that lemon in your mouth, and all of the juices go all over your tongue, around your mouth. There's that sour taste. Now what you'll notice is that your mouth is already salivating,
Right.
right? Now, there was no lemon there, yet you could taste something and potentially even smell something. So on social media, all of these senses can come into it. So you only really need one, but oftentimes you're getting multiple. If you're getting multiple, it's just going to mean the trance is even stronger.
In the 1980s, a scientist named Benjamin Lebet hooked people up to brain sensors and told them, flick your wrist whenever you decide to. He found their brains fired up to half a second before they consciously chose to flick their wrist. In other words, your brain makes the decision before you consciously decide it. Do you agree with that in general?
we almost get into free will here, but if you imagine a boxer, so a boxer's in the ring, he's throwing punches, jabs, crosses, whatever. Now, when the boxer is in the ring, he's not consciously thinking punch or dodge or throw a hook here. It's just happening automatically. So you could almost say anything that's automatic is happening through your subconscious, happening through that trance reaction. But that being said, what led to that was the 6 months, the 12 months, the 2 years, the 5 years of essentially training that pattern again and again and again to make that automatic. So I would definitely say there is a lot of truth to that. It's just most people don't realize that that first step is essentially happening. It's just happening unconsciously. So in that, I haven't read that study specifically, but it makes complete sense from what you're saying.
Do you think we have free will?
I've thought about this, and you've seen the movie The Matrix.
Right.
So there's the famous scene in The Matrix where Morpheus offers Neo the blue pill or the red pill. Now, in that moment, he opens his left hand first with the blue pill, and then his right hand second with the red pill. Now, what most people don't realize is that he's intentionally doing something to influence Neo's decision making. It's called recency bias, which is basically just means we're more likely to say yes to the thing that we just heard. So he very intentionally offers blue first and then red second because he wants Neo to take the red pill so that he can escape the Matrix, thus giving Neo the illusion of free will. Now, Neo still has a choice, so there is an element of free will, but he's also being influenced at the same time. So this is how most people live their life. They're being given the illusion that they have control, the illusion that they can make decisions, but really they're just being offered what they're being offered. It's kind of like if you go to a restaurant and there's certain things on the menu, 99% of people are just going to say, I'll just take what's on the menu because that's obviously what's offered there, right? But in reality, you could have anything you want. So my gut says it would lean more towards no, if I'm being completely truthful with you.
So would you say our decisions are a result of our programming, or like we're actively making choices about everything? Like if I was at a restaurant offered a Coca-Cola or a water, would you say that decision is something I think about in the moment, or it's just like from years of programming that decision?
So I'll give another example of this to kind of illustrate. Sometimes metaphors help. So imagine you get into your car and you put your Google Maps on and you start driving. Now, halfway through, a couple of things are gonna happen. You're gonna realize that you actually didn't even notice what you programmed into Google Maps. You did it automatically. So one of three things will happen. You'll get to your destination, or halfway you realize you're going the wrong way. Or the third, and this is really the most sinister, is that you'll keep driving, realize you're going the wrong way, and continue going to the wrong direction. And then you'll make yourself believe that you chose it because you were already committed to going all of that way. Now, to take this a step further, what always pops up on your Google Maps as soon as you get into it? Home, right? It always suggests to go home because home is what is familiar. So even if you're not wanting to go home, it's still going to suggest home, meaning you're more likely to go that way. So this is essentially what's happening in people's subconsciouses, right? The subconscious and our minds and just ourselves, we always want what is familiar. That's why for you, you probably feel very comfortable in your podcast studio because you've been here a bunch of times, versus if you fly to another country, maybe there's more variables, it's less familiar, you're a bit more in your head, you're a little bit more uncomfortable. So we'll always fight for that comfort and that familiarity, and everything around us is designed to give us more of that. But those exact things that are designed to give us that familiarity are also the things keeping us confined.
That tells you a lot, that if the number one suggestion that people get is home, then people are just routed to do the thing that's familiar constantly. So you're saying every single person watching this podcast has an identity right now, and you think none of them chose that identity. As it pertains to young men, what would you say are the three biggest forces that write someone's identity?
That's a really good question. Let me think about that. the thing that's influencing young men more than anybody is, like we said earlier, it's going to be their parent, typically a father figure. Now, the problem is that a lot of young men nowadays, they don't have a father figure. So they have to go and find that father figure in other ways. Maybe it's people online, for example. So I know you just had Andrew Tate on the podcast, right? I was mentioning to you before we got on, I was just at this party in Miami, saw him there. And then a few hours later, he's gone into jail, right? And the crazy thing with that is he actually uses a hypnotist, by the way. And what he's essentially done is hypnotized young men to a set of belief systems, right? Now, whether you want to argue if they're good or bad, it's not what I'm here to do. I think probably a bit of both. But if we use the lens of hypnosis to look at what actually happened there, because it will paint the picture, he was able to come in as a very strong authority figure in a place that was missing for a lot of young men. And he was able to give them an identity, become a strong man, become a provider, become a protector, make money. These are all elements of the identity, right? It's going to give them certain value systems, certain belief systems, even the way they would speak. Language is a big part of identity, right? You can maybe even think about people who would imitate him, right? And so whatever is the strongest force in somebody's life is going to ultimately determine their belief systems, because nobody really knows who they actually are. If you ask yourself the question, who am I? The first thing that might come to mind is, well, I'm Jack. But what is Jack? Jack is a label. It's some letters that your parents gave you. And your name is really like the closest thing to your identity. If you read like stuff about influence and persuasion, they'll say, use the person's name because it makes them feel good, right? It's like a cheap like persuasion tactic. But it really is the closest thing to us. But that is what we see as our identity. Yet it wasn't even given to us. It was given to us by our parents. So most people just accept the identity that they were given. This is what I mean by it. And so it's only by, it really is exiting the matrix. It is becoming conscious to realize, zoom out what is actually happening to then be able to change their identity. But like in that Google Maps example, when the person's going the wrong way and they realize it, then they just keep going because now they've committed. They're already halfway. Turning back feels more painful to admit, maybe I was wrong. People don't want to be told that they're wrong or admit that they're wrong because that does not feel good. Yet that's how people get stuck in the same patterns year after year after year, and they can't change it.
You said something along the lines of people's identity is modeled after the individual with the most authority in their lives. Is that the individual, the system? What gives something authority necessarily?
What gives something authority is, do you believe this thing is true? Now, there's many different facets that will go into what creates a belief system. You can study religions, for example, and cults. What's actually happening there? Well, as soon as you go into religion, you're given what? An identity. So if you were Christian and I asked, who are you? You would have said, I'm Jack, I'm Christian, as an identity statement. So that's already filling a gap. It's making you feel a sense of connection, which is ultimately a human need that we all have. You can call it love as well. It's something we deeply all desire. It's giving you a form of significance. It's making you feel like, okay, yeah, I'm part of something. It might make you feel like you're contributing as well to something. These are all parts of your own human needs that are going to make you subscribe to something. The religious institution is going to meet those needs. It's also going to give you like a home, a sense of safety. These are things that a lot of people feel like they're missing in their life. Or a schooling system. The teacher is put in a position of authority. There's all of these subtle things that happen. The teacher tells you to stand, you stand. The teacher tells you to stand in a line outside. These are all subtle cues that are basically putting that person in a position of authority over you. And every time that you comply, they're gaining more and more authority over you.
I would guess it's either the person you're looking at has something that you want but don't have, or the person you're seeing as an authority has the ability to take away what you have or punish you.
Yes. And if you whittle that down to the universal principle, it's pain or pleasure. So in that example with the school teacher, if you don't line up outside, there's a consequence, right? You'll get detention. If you do and you follow the instructions, you'll get good grades and then you'll get a good job. And then, you know, how does that work out for most people? They're not very well, right? So it ultimately comes down to these two things, pain and pleasure. So we're either looking to avoid pain or move towards reward. That's really the only reasons we do everything in our life.
And why do human beings specifically have this natural urge to look at someone else to get their truth about the world?
Herd mentality. People will never admit this, but what everybody's looking for is somebody to follow, somebody to tell them what to think, somebody to tell them what to believe, because they ultimately do not know what to really think and what to believe. Because the thought of asking those questions is terrifying, because that then means they don't know. And that's the unknown. And then that comes back to the question, who am I? Which, you know, it's only really by taking time with yourself you can really understand this. There was a study done on men, and they basically gave them two options. You can either sit alone in a room in silence for 10 minutes, or you can be electrocuted. Most men chose to be electrocuted because the idea of being by themselves with their own thoughts and then what would come up in those thoughts was more painful than the physical pain of an electric shock.
Mm.
So most of humanity's problems can be solved by just sitting in a room in silence and just meeting those fears, those parts of yourself. But people will do everything that they can to avoid that. That's why you use social media, because it's a guarantee with absolute certainty. It's going to give you connection. It's going to give you novelty. It's going to give you all of these emotions so that you can avoid what's really going on in here.
So there's essentially two choices. It's one, like decide your own reality and risk being kicked outside of the tribe, or join the tribe and whoever they follow. And it's usually easier to just join the tribe and observe the person with the authority.
So you have a big audience that's continuing to grow. How much of that fear do you still feel? Because you have to obviously get over a lot of it to be able to be where you are now. But does that ever come up for you?
I would suspect no, because I don't know what fear you're referencing.
Oh, the fear of being judged.
Being No, you can't think about that and do this for this long.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
in your case, you were able to overcome that fear to be able to get to here, right? But for a lot of people who might want to do something in the spotlight, that's the very thing that holds them back. Because like you said, in the tribe example, they're having to exit that tribe, or the religious example, or the family example. It's all basically the same thing.
So you've said a lot of our identity and beliefs are shaped during the childhood 0 to 8 ages because we're in that theta state. I guess for people growing up or people with kids, what do you think is the single most damaging sentence a parent can say to a child? Like that one line that sticks in their head for many, many years.
The most damaging sentence a parent can say to their child is, I am disappointed in you. Not, you did this thing wrong, or that was bad, or you're stupid, because those are all things that the child did. So if the child did something wrong, like they messed up on a school test, that's okay. That's not them personally. Maybe they'll feel a sense of guilt about that, but then they'll get over it. But when a parent says, I'm disappointed in you, that's talking directly to the child's sense of self, their self-image, their identity. And that doesn't mean you did something wrong. That means I am wrong. And so therefore the child feels shame. And when somebody feels shame, this is really the heaviest emotion somebody can carry. And then how does this manifest in their life? Well, if I feel shameful, if I don't feel good enough, if I don't feel like I deserve things, somebody could then turn into, say, a people pleaser. Maybe they become the type of person who just wants to do everything for everybody else and prove that they're enough, even if it's at the expense of themselves. Or, and this is even worse, they could go the other way. They could become more aloof and become more closed off to opening themselves up because of the vulnerability that comes with that. So it's better to at least stay away so then I don't have to open myself up to the potential of being wrong.
Hmm.
So these develop in core different fears, whether it's fear of rejection, fear of not being good enough. A lot of people, it's fear of failure as well. This is a really big one that hold people back. But they all ultimately come from the same place, the same programming that happens when they were younger. But I don't really even need to focus on that. If I'm helping somebody overcome it, I don't care about what happened to you, with all due respect. All I care about is where do you want to go? And so whatever you focus on is what you'll experience. So if you're focused on, okay, well, my parent did this to me at that time, now we understand that that's just what's going to keep manifesting. That's what you're going to keep hypnotizing yourself to believe. The attachment to that story, because even though you consciously want to move away from it, there's also this part of you that kind of secretly likes it because it's comfortable, it's familiar, right? So to let go of that means to almost let go of a part of your sense of self. And then it comes back to the question, who am I? And then to answer that question creates the space to actually say, well, actually, I'm this type of person. The most powerful statement somebody can make is I am, because this is the closest part to our identity. But the problem is people are using words that are unknowingly making themselves sabotage themselves. So there's really 3 words that you should never say. The first is I need to. The second word is I should. And the third is really the most dangerous, which is I try to. Because if I try to pick up this bottle of water right now, this is me trying, right? It's not happening. And this is how most people live in their life. They try to do things, but that just means to not do. Like Yoda said, right? You either do or you do not.
Hmm.
So then once you delete those words from your vocabulary, you can replace them now with new words. I am is the most powerful. I want to, I get to, I'd love to. And immediately, even as you say these words in your own mind, notice how you just feel differently about yourself. Like the sense of assurance that gives you, the sense of confidence that gives you just by changing the words, because the language is the gateway to the subconscious mind. So there's language that other people will say that you'll take in, but then there's language in your own mind, your self-talk. And then the third is the words that you speak out. This is really the most powerful. So this is using just these 3 words will immediately shift how you view yourself, which will shift how you act, which will ultimately shift your results.
An interesting one about I am, I was talking to my wife about this last night, is that I think a reason that manifestation could work theoretically, just that concept, is if you say, I am a billionaire, I'm not. And we have free will theoretically, then that would mean you get to choose your identity. So if you're choosing your identity, then the world around you should shape to that identity theoretically.
Yeah.
Have you thought about that concept?
I did this to myself. So when I started doing what I do now, it was only a year and a half ago. And Maggie, my fiance, is behind me. I was sitting in her dad's house, and I was kind of at a point in my life where I'm like, okay, what the heck do I do? And that was when I stumbled across hypnosis again. I started 12 hours a day just getting enthralled in it. I was hypnotized by this idea that you can just change who you are like that at the snap of the fingers. And so I said, well, I need to see if this shit actually works and try it on myself. So that day I decided I'm going to be a hypnotist for billionaires, for the most influential people in the world, for successful athletes, for pop stars, celebrities, whoever. And Maggie, the thing I love about her, she believes in me probably more than I even believe in myself. But even in that moment, she was thinking, well, there's no $1 billion, like you said, right? Like what's to base this off? But I had so much self-belief. I chose to believe it by getting so associated to it, by telling myself it, by feeling it, that within literally like days, people started to come in. Within months, the goal that I'd set out for 3 years from now happened in terms of the types of people I was working with. So the problem for most people of why them just saying I'm a billionaire doesn't work is because they don't actually believe it. And it's not actually their real goal, right? It's not what they actually want. Because why do you want to be a billionaire? Do you even understand what comes with that. You have no idea what comes with that. I work with billionaires. I see the life that they live. I would not want to trade lives with almost any of them because of all of the baggage that comes with that. Now, this is why people it won't actually happen, because deep down in their subconscious, they know it's not what they actually want. And so for this to really work, I'll only hypnotize someone for something like that when it's truly what they actually want. And to understand what somebody truly wants, we have to go layers deeper to understand why. What's the purpose behind it? How does this connect? Why is this a 100% absolute must that this is where I'm going no matter what? And I'm willing to give up everything for it. When you have that and you can get clear on that, then if you're saying those things to yourself, they'll actually happen.
I guess through the lens of hypnosis, like what do you think is the key reason that most people don't have what they want? Like, is it a belief?
They don't believe they deserve it deep down. They don't believe that they should have the success, that they deserve the recognition, that they can even be healthy, in good shape. Like, the reason why people are obese is because psychologically they believe they should be obese because that's their sense of self-worth. It's all psychological. It has nothing to do with food. So that is fundamentally the reason why. It's that they believe that they deserve to be there because of their own self-concept.
I guess to touch onto your story for a bit, like what would you say is the most important moment from your childhood to understand who you are and why you do what you do?
I would say when I was around 8 or 9 years old, my parents would continuously split up. And so this happened maybe 9 times throughout my childhood. And so I would always see my mom upset, in pain, suffering. And we didn't grow up with a lot of money, but I could tell that the money wasn't really the problem. It was something deeper inside of her on an emotional layer. And I remember this one day when she was so upset with my dad. And I got so angry about this situation that I literally remember grabbing a baseball bat for when my dad was coming home to like literally want to hit him with this thing. And in that moment, I realized that, okay, I actually don't have the tools to know how to deal with this properly. So that made me obsessed with understanding humans, human behavior, human psychology, how we work, because I never wanted to see someone suffer like that again. So that was kind of what led me on this whole journey of personal development, understanding the mind and all of that kind of stuff. It was just wanting to alleviate more people from that. And so with what I do now, people kind of see the success side that people get from it, which is awesome. But really, I'll kind of reveal it now, I guess, for the first time. I'm just doing that to give people what they want so I can give them what they need. Because I know that as soon as they get the $1 million or the whatever, they'll realize that that doesn't actually fulfill them. And this is just what happened in my own life. I didn't know this back then. So after university, I was supposed to be an investment banker. That didn't happen. I couldn't do it. So I went back to working, trying to start businesses from my parents' shed. And I was just obsessed with, okay, I need to make money so I can create freedom. That happened shortly after. And I'll never forget the day I moved into a penthouse. This was my idea of success and significance. And I remember looking out at the skyline of London, and all I could think inside was, if this is what success is, why do I feel so empty inside? And that was really a point where I realized, okay, there's more to this equation than just success. There is a algorithm for success. There is a mechanism. It's a science. But then fulfillment is different. It's more like an art form. So I got really more into that journey. And then that's kind of over the 12 years, I really then realized, okay, now I know how to combine these things together.
What was the reason you didn't feel uh, successful in that penthouse?
It wasn't that I didn't feel successful. See, we do everything for an emotion. So to the person who maybe is listening, who maybe even has some of that success already, you did that to ultimately feel good enough about yourself or give yourself a sense of security or a sense of self-worth. But then if you're somebody who's created any level of success, you'll quickly realize that's very short-lived. It's just because it's only dealing on the very superficial layer. What we really want is something much deeper. It's love, right? It's a community. It's somebody to rely on. It's somebody to believe in us. I didn't have any of those things because I sacrificed those things for success. And so many people do that along the way. The billionaires I'm working with, it's really oftentimes this stuff. They're not asking how to make another $1 billion. They know how to make the money. It's okay, now I've done this. How do I clean up all of the, fires that I set off along the way? How do I rectify this relationship with my kids who I haven't seen, or my wife, or my team see me as this aggressor type person? So that's more what I mean when I say that.
And then on the story you told about the bat, when you think about the other significant moments in your childhood, the ones that shaped you, like, did you ever attempt to erase any of those memories, any of those experiences, or alter the way you saw them?
So yes, but not in the way you think. So actually, a lot of the quote unquote traumatic things that happened in my life, I didn't even knew that they happened until I started getting into this work because my mind literally deleted them automatically. And for a lot of people, if they've had a challenging childhood, one of the ways that they deal with it is by just deleting it from their mind so that they don't have to deal with the emotion anymore. Now, of course, I understand how to do that consciously, and there's techniques with hypnosis and techniques with NLP that I'll take people through to delete that. But it's not that you want to completely forget it. You just want to forget the emotion that was associated to it. Because a memory without the painful emotion is just a memory, right? Like, for example, you can think about maybe your first heartbreak. I remember mine, and I remember the pain I was in at the time, and maybe you do too. And you felt this, every emotion, right? Sadness, anger, apathy, shame. And it was such a strong emotion. And yet suddenly, if you look back to that now from where you're currently at, all of those emotions you felt then, you probably don't feel anymore because you've moved past it, right? It's still there, but you've essentially deleted the emotion that was attached to it. That's really what, when I talk about deletion, what I really mean.
Right. You said in the childhood, if a parent says something along the lines of, you are not, what was it? I am disappointed in you, is a common thing that the people you work with, like a common thing they do is they don't separate the behavior out from the disappointment and they just assume that they're disappointed holistically. Is that what most people do when they hear that kind of phrasing?
Yeah. So if you think back to childhood, you're in a trance, like we talked about. And then who do you listen to more than anybody? Your parent, because they're that authority figure. So they're also your sense of safety. So as a child, you're constantly scanning for, am I safe? Am I safe? So if a parent says that, the words almost don't even matter as much as the emotion behind it. So that's really what the child is taking on. And their whole world can crumble with just a few words. And oftentimes, the crazy thing is that it's not even with words, it's just with actions. So if a dad starts spending more time away, maybe even if it's just at work, a child might say, oh, my dad doesn't love me, right? And that was even my view of my dad. He was working all the time because he came to the UK from being wealthy in Africa, actually, is where he grew up, to then being kicked out of the country, leaving at gunpoint to come into the UK and basically living in poverty. So he works his entire life to try and give me a better life. But as a child, I didn't see that. I just saw my dad's not here, therefore he does not love me or he does not care about me. And it's only through being able to kind of understand this and then heal through it that the relationship changed. But the best thing about this, though, is that it only takes one person to change a relationship. So our relationship totally changed when I started doing this stuff, and he doesn't even need to be conscious of it. It just is.
Hmm. In 1968, psychologists told teachers that certain randomly picked kids were about to bloom intellectually. By the end of the year, the randomly chosen students had significantly higher IQ scores, and this phenomenon was called the Pygmalion effect. It basically showed that the teachers believing the kids were gifted made them gifted. How much of your identity is based on other people's expectations of you?
So the short answer is a lot. Think about it like this. Have you ever gone to, say, another city or another country where you're trying to do something new or trying to be somebody new? And maybe in your current city, your family see you in a certain way. They see you as that little boy, Jack from Kentucky, and you had that whole life. But then suddenly, when you're in a new city and you introduce yourself as Jack, I do X, Y, Z, that person does what? They accept your identity statement to them. So me accepting that from you reinforces it back to you. This is why words are so powerful and speaking them are so powerful. The problem is that most people never even change their environment to get that opportunity to do it. Now, this is more like a hack in reality. You don't have to do this in order to create that, but it's a heck of a lot harder when you're trying to change whilst everybody else around you still sees you in that certain way. That's oftentimes why, particularly for young men, and I experienced this when I was working from my mom's shed, whilst all my friends had these high-flying investment jobs. I couldn't go out with them. I couldn't travel around because I hadn't made any success yet. And I was saying, no, I'm going to make it. I'm shouting my affirmations. I've got my vision board there, yet it's not happened yet. And so it was a real struggle. It was a real pain. And for a lot of particularly younger people at that stage of their life, this is why they need somebody to look up to. This is why they find other figures who give them that sense of self-belief, because they don't get it from the people around them. So it's massively shaped from people around you. I think it's a skill set to develop a discernment filter. And what I mean by that is just being aware that once you're aware, now you aren't necessarily as susceptible to it. So you kind of can more consciously choose what you do take in and do not take in. It's a really important skill set to have, because it still shocks me to this day how people just accept whatever. It's even like, it can be something as simple as you go to Starbucks and somebody writes your name wrong on the coffee cup. You just accept it. This is like, okay, yeah, this person just spelled my name wrong. Actually, I was at the airport with Maggie, and I obviously have a different accent to the people here, and they were shouting out, Nike.
I'm so sorry. I think I misunderstood the Nike story.
Okay.
So who called who Nike?
So basically, I ordered 2 coffees, and they asked for the name, and I said Maggie, but they thought I said Nike.
Right. But you would have said Nike.
Yes.
Right.
I would have. Yeah, I would have. Yeah.
Stupid Americans, man. I'm joking.
Now, it's obviously a silly example. She doesn't think her name's Nike, but it's more just to illustrate how just one subtle change, how somebody perceives you, can be the complete difference. The reason why it didn't create an identity change in that moment is because the context is, this person is somebody who works at Starbucks. I don't necessarily see them as an authority. But if somebody who I really look up to maybe pronounce my name slightly differently, and maybe you can think of this in times, particularly when younger, if it's a boss or somebody else who just gives you a nickname, as an example, you end up kind of just like accepting that and taking that on, right? Because why? You want to be part of the tribe still.
I cannot believe that someone wrote down Nike. I mean, Starbucks.
They were like, Nike? And then Maggie was like, I think they're talking about me.
Did you know that they actually told their employees to write down fake names as a marketing stunt?
I did not know
Like
that.
they would give people like ridiculous versions of their names so people would post it online and do free advertising for Starbucks.
Genius.
But I didn't. I
Maybe
think they
that's
stopped running that. But
I don't know. Maybe they didn't get the memo at the airport.
Nike. On ads, you've said, quote, ads are hypnosis with a budget. How do companies hypnotize you to want something that you don't really need?
So a company's primary incentive is to get you to buy something that you are maybe not even thinking about. So how do they do that? Well, the first step is to create a gap inside of you, right? And most marketing and advertising is essentially sub-communicating to you that you're not good enough as you are. So I'll give you an example. We were driving to this studio we're going to start working at in Hollywood. And I'm just looking at the the ads of the celebrities or the colognes, and they're dressed really nicely and they've got a big smile on their face and they're so happy. Now, on one level, you might just go, well, that's just a celebrity holding a cologne. But what is it subcommunicating? It's subcommunicating that this person of high status and authority, who is happy, who is rich, who's wealthy, who's in great shape, who has everything you want in life, also uses this cologne. So what does that then make you think? Well, if I have this cologne, then I will also have those things. But they have to make you feel not good enough as you are without it. This is the key, right? So oftentimes, if you're a smart marketer, you'll use pain as the primary driver. And it's funny because my previous company before this was a marketing company. So this is what I did basically all day. And it was honestly like it was a tough point in my life once I started to understand this of like, where's the moral line? So how a company's hypnotizing you, there's those three facets of hypnosis. There's the repetition. So you're seeing the ad continuously, whether it's on your social media, whether it's outside, you see it again and again, or you see the McDonald's logo. You immediately know what that means because you've seen it so many times. Then there's the suggestion, which is going to be, this is who you become by using this product, or you're this type of person if you fly business class. And if you don't fly business class and you fly coach, I believe you call it here, then you're this type of person, right? And so I remember feeling this for myself when I couldn't afford to fly business class, thinking, I hate going into coach. Why is this so bad for me? And it was because it was creating a misalignment with my identity. And it does something, there's a phenomenon called identity mismatch, which is where you don't believe you are where you should be right now. If you are affected on that level by advertising, you'll slap it on the credit card. You'll make decisions that even though you know consciously are bad for you, you cannot not make them because there's such a deep disagreement and an internal fight going on. So they'll do this with the repetition and the suggestion. And then the third one is the emotion. How do you feel? Well, now I can be in business class laying back and I'm amongst these people and I can relax. I can be comfortable. I now see myself as this type of person. So this is how it's done, and it's always been done. But when you can see it, then you don't have to follow it anymore. You can kind of just look at it more like a game. And this is the perspective I encourage people to take on, is just like, look at it through the lens of curiosity. Look at it like, why is that happening? Not this is bad, just, okay, well, what's actually going on there? Because then I really like that mindset, because then now everything is just working for you. Everything is happening for you. So that's how I think about it.
Is there a prevalent example that comes to mind? Like, what's an identity a company has sold for years to men, for example?
I would say Nike or Nike.
I knew it.
It's in our mind now, right? They've probably done one of the best marketing campaigns of all time, because Nike are never talking about how good their shoe is. They're never talking about how the rubber hits the road or the lace or any of that stuff. All they're doing is showing these athletes who are either famous, so there's the authority there, or they're in amazing shape, which is also another method of creating authority, who look good, like they're having a good time. So therefore, if I buy that shoe, I am then define myself as an athlete. Now, here's the thing. This can be a good thing for you as well, because if you now define yourself as an athlete and you take on that identity, you will act in accordance, right? It's like if you became 100 pounds overweight tomorrow, but you define yourself as a professional athlete and you were a professional athlete up until this moment in your life, then if you gain 100 pounds tomorrow, how quickly do you think you're going to lose that weight? Super fast, right? Why? Because it's your identity. It's who you believe you are, who you believe you should be, and you'll always act in accordance with that.
I love that example. Yeah. It's like, it's so obvious the best athletes wear this. So if you want to be the best athlete, you have to wear that. How do schools hypnotize kids to be more obedient?
The crazy thing is this is actually something that happened to me. When I was at university doing economics, I was programmed to believe that instead of religion, the thing I should worship is money. And this is what happens to all of us. We whatever we go into is what we're essentially programmed to, right? So if you imagine yourself, you're in a school and you're studying a certain thing, there's a crowd, there's a person of authority who's making you believe this. By changing ultimately what you put on a pedestal, what you look up to, what is the carrot at the end of the stick. And also, this was a really personal one because I did that. I genuinely stopped believing in God and I became atheist for a period of time because everybody around me had the same thing. It was just get this job, make this money. And that happened. Well, I did the business, but I made money. And then lo and behold, that was the day at the top of the balcony looking over the skyline of London, having the success, but feeling the deep sense of dissatisfaction, right? And so that happened to me, right? And it happens to all of us, and everyone can probably think of how that has also happened to them. But you got to realize that it's all done for one reason, which is ultimately control. And people will oftentimes demonize control. It's not necessarily a bad thing. There is a necessary amount of control that is needed for a society to run functionally. It's just that here's actually the most valuable thing I can say here. The way to escape all of this, and in the school example, is simply just to question why. Is that true? How do you know? If you can just question your reality, and I don't know if you were one of those kids who asked questions or not, but imagine if you're the kid who asks the questions, how does that rub the teacher up the wrong way? How frustrated do they get, right? Because
Isn't that so funny that
Yeah.
teachers don't like kids who ask a bunch of questions?
yeah, well, why do you think that is?
I don't know, because they didn't ask a bunch of questions, which made them a good student, which allowed them to become a teacher in the first place.
Yeah, and that teacher is essentially running on a script, right? Like I do these things and I should get this result and then this will happen. But then what's happening is kids are starting to wake up. They're getting their information from different sources. You could argue they're getting hypnotized from other places, but they're starting to ask this. This is why the schooling system's falling apart, literally right in front of us, because it just simply does not work. So the number one thing anyone can do is just question, like, why is this the way that it is? And oftentimes when you do that, you immediately then realize, oh, I don't have to accept this reality. And yeah, you might ruffle a few feathers doing it, but I believe that's the whole point, isn't it? It'd be pretty boring without that.
Do you think AI is hypnotizing people?
So if we look at how we interact with AI, how do you use AI? What role does it currently play in your life? There is a form of relationship there, first of all. And if you're going to anything for information, there's a unconscious contract that this thing is essentially knows more than you do. Meaning there is a sense of authority with the AI. So what do most people use AI for? They use it to just search, but almost like the internet. And so what happens after that? It means you develop trust with it, which then means you will actually start to do what it says or outsource your belief systems to it. So oftentimes, if somebody asks somebody a question over text, think about if you've ever done this. Somebody asks you a question, maybe you're not exactly sure how to answer it. What do you go and do? You screenshot it, you put it into your AI, and then you say, how would you answer this? And then you look at the answer to that and you think, oh, that's a great answer. I'm going to just use that answer. Maybe I'll edit it slightly, right? Or an email or whatever it might be. So you're already in a trance with it because it's influencing you on such a deep level because it feels like it knows you almost better than you know yourself, which in some ways you could argue is true because essentially AI is like a physical form of universal consciousness because it's kind of like a collective, right? Obviously, the dangerous part with that is you don't know who's really programming it and you don't know necessarily what their intentions are. But to a massive degree with how we currently use it, but then as we start merging more with AI, I think that it won't even be a hypnosis because it's just going to become part of us. It's such a deep part of our identity that we will get to a point where we just are one with it. So I think it even goes deeper than hypnosis. I think it goes into universal consciousness. And if you look at even Elon, he thinks within 10 years, like the AI is, it's pretty much, we're like a primate compared to it. I actually watched a great interview with him this morning where the interviewer was asked, like, she didn't believe that AI would overtake us like that. And he said, well, how do you look at a chimpanzee? Obviously, we're much more developed than them. And he gave the example that, well, we're basically just an evolved chimpanzee and AI is only going to get smarter and we still eat bananas. So it's influencing us right now on a level that I don't think anyone actually understands, even the founders of these AI companies, because it's ultimately thinking
Shaping their decisions at this point.
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, but I don't want to go down the whole like sinister conspiracy route here, but like I think there's a good chance that we will pretty much be controlled by AI, if we aren't already. The thing is, the problem with it is that when you think about it, people imagine there's just going to be these robots on the street. We won't even know it's happened. That's the thing. It's like when somebody is being unknowingly hypnotized, that's the key. It's unknowing. They don't even know that it's happening. So it's kind of the way to do that is step by step, slowly, slowly. It's kind of like the analogy of slowly boiling the frog in the water. You ever heard of that? Just turning up a degree at a time until the frog realizes that it's too late. It's already boiled. So
I think about this concept with God a lot, is that the God people worship isn't the one that they actively choose to worship, but it's the thing that they're consciously or they're unconsciously thinking about all the time. Like you'd said earlier, I worshipped money instead of like a creator or like some other thing. And I would guess that the people listening to this often think about money more in the day than they do about God, even though they call themselves a Christian. And I think we're shifting from money to AI being the thing that is on the collective consciousness's mind right now. You know what I mean?
I had a new client yesterday, 25-year-old kid. He's making like 750 grand a month, super successful, and he wanted to change his value systems, right? And values are a part of your identity. And he said, I want to value, love more and peace and all of these things. And I said, okay, what do you currently value? And he said, well, I don't know. And I said, just look at your calendar and your search history. That's what you value, right? That's essentially what you worship. So whatever you put the most time and energy into is what you're currently worshiping.
Right.
And this comes back to the advertising thing of like, why do we get so pushed to just have to do more, have to do more, have to achieve more? Like, when is enough enough? When can you just say, I am enough as I am? I'm good enough as I am. But you can't say that, because if you say that, then you would have to potentially lose that driver that's pushing you. It's like being on a hamster wheel. The hamster can't get off the hamster wheel because that's all that the hamster knows. It takes a lot to just say like, I'm done. But for so many people, including myself, you have to get to a point of enough pain where you just say, okay, I'm just going to make a decision. It's enough is enough. I'm willing to let go of that, let go of the money, let go of the desire for this, and then true abundance will come. But the and then part is the unknown, which is so difficult to believe that it could be true. That, okay, if I stop pushing, if I stop operating from fear, if I stop this hamster wheel that I've put myself on, that more can come. And I can tell you in just my own anecdotal experience and the people I've worked with is that as soon as you don't need something anymore and you stop chasing, that's when you're given it in abundance. It's kind of like that catch-22, of as soon as you don't need it, then you have it, or like a dating analogy, right? If you're pursuing a girl and you really, really want her, in some way, it's almost can push her away. But then as soon as you're able to take a step back and just be good as you are, you immediately attract her to you. It's the same kind of concept with money as well.
Do you think it's more important to not need something and that leads to getting it? Or do you think it's more important to feel as though you already have it?
No one has ever asked me that question. That is such a good question. So is it important to feel like you already have something or to not need it, which is essentially detachment that you're speaking to? My gut says to feel like you already have it. Because if you feel like you already have it by default, you then don't need it. Because you already have, so say we use a billionaire example. If you truly feel, and this is one of the things I'll do, I'll hypnotize very successful people into that billionaire identity. It has nothing to do with the money. Sure, the money is a byproduct, but it's the identity of it. So if you feel like you have those things, let's say you feel like you're enough, you have confidence, you feel amazing inside of yourself, then you're automatically detached from it. So yeah, I would say the first.
Why does that work mechanistically? Like, why do you think it works?
I think it's just a universal law. It's like you look at the Hermetic principles, as above, so below. I only have one tattoo on my arm. I don't know if the camera can pick it up, but I have this little equation on my arm right here that says IS equals ER, which stands for internal state equals external reality. And so the idea is that your internal state is just your thoughts created by your mind, emotions created by your body, and then your environment. So who you surround yourself with, where you are. From my journey so far and the people that I've worked with, these are really the three principles I work on. Because if you can become in alignment with the reality that you already want, it's a universal principle. You can even get into quantum physics with this, like attracts like. I think that's what quantum physics is kind of figuring out right now. But from my experience so far, that's it. Or if you take a more practical example, we go a little bit less woo-woo and a little bit more grounded. Actually, I'll give you an example of the one of my favorite movies is Catch Me If You Can. You seen that one?
No, but I've heard about it.
Okay, so basically it's Leonardo DiCaprio as a kid and he's impersonating being different jobs. Like he's a pilot in one and he's a lawyer. He has no skill in any of these things, yet he acts as if. So he turns up certain, confident. He's not in other people's frame. He's a teacher, even teaching from a textbook, right? And because of that, because he acts that way, reality, aka other people, treat him that way, simply because he just acted as if. So if we can look at it on the individual level, kind of makes sense that it would just work this way. You heard of the book Think and Grow Rich?
Right, yeah.
It's a super famous personal development, self-help book around money. The funny thing about that book, this is credited as like the number one self-development book of all time by a lot of smart people. That book was written by a con man. The guy literally was just made it up. Like his whole journey, the whole story, he just made it up. He just acted as if, and then he became one of the most notable people of all time, Napoleon Hill or whatever his name is. I think that we can truly just select who we want to be. And if you want, I can even do a quick test right now if you want to just try it. This will
Sure.
take 60 seconds. So if you want to try it, just close your eyes. Now imagine yourself as the version of yourself that you want to be. Wherever you are, the success, the finance, the relationship, all of it. Now, how does that version of yourself walk? How do they talk? How do they breathe? What is their posture? How do they articulate themselves? How do they look people in the eye? Take a deep breath into that. Exhale. Now open your eyes. All you have to do is act like that person, the version of yourself that you feel like right now. If you just do that every single day, it will change all of your actions. And immediately, if anybody wants to try that at home, just try that. Replay that bit. What I just did, it took 10 seconds, and then go and do whatever action you wanted to do. I can bet you that it will change the outcomes of your results.
That's fascinating how quickly that works.
And this is why I always say it is easier to change fast than slow, by the way. So if you think about, if I have a Band-Aid on my arm and I want to rip it off slowly, hair by hair, it's coming out. Painful, right? Whereas I just rip the Band-Aid off, it's done. And that's really how identity change works. It is actually easier to do this stuff quickly when you're working on the right layer because your mind doesn't have a chance to intervene.
A study I found on that, and it kind of highlights the ideas that you've been talking about here, was there was something called the Batman effect, where they took a group of kids and told them to complete a boring, repetitive task on a computer. And then they took a second group of kids, told them to do the same task, but pretend to be Batman while they worked. And the ones who pretended to be Batman worked significantly longer than the kids who were just being themselves. Like, why does borrowing someone else's identity beat improving your own? Or do you think the second one is more optimal?
you can copy someone else's identity from them. And the crazy thing is this is usually the fastest way to actually start. Now, this doesn't mean it's the best way till the end, but it's the fastest way to start. Why? Because we can mirror something so much easier than we can create it ourselves. So if you see Batman, you know, in that example we just did 10 seconds ago, how does Batman show up? How does he speak? What is his aura, his presence? It's very easy to imitate that. This is how we learn as children, right? Like we just look at our parents and we don't listen to what they say. We just copy what they do. So that's how we work as people. We just copy, we imitate, we emulate. And so many people get stuck in, I need to find like the secret 5-step process, or I need to understand this piece of knowledge, or I need to get this certificate. No, dude, if you just act like the person you want to be, and oftentimes if there is already a person who is what you want to be, this is why mentors are so powerful, you'll get 80% of the way there. Now, the trap with that is that if you just blindly copy till the end, there's probably going to be certain value systems, belief systems, actions that you may not want to emulate. But it's a freaking great place to start if you're starting from the beginning. And I would even say, as a challenge to your viewers listening to this, just try it. Like, imagine if you were to, whoever you like, if whoever your favorite superhero is, right? Like when I was a kid, it was Spider-Man for me. So I'd be like slinging webs, jumping around on the couch. Like in my mind as a child, I'm temporarily Spider-Man. And then I also have all of the same emotions, the same mannerisms as Spider-Man. And so one of the first things I'll do is, before we start this podcast, I went like this, right? Because this for me is like, it's an anchor with something from NLP, right? It's putting me into a certain state, but it's also like a superhero state. So I do that all the time before I'm doing anything like podcast or going on camera or something like that, just because it immediately puts me into that identity. But the more you consume something unconsciously and it's repeating the same thing to you, you'll just naturally take on those mannerisms and characteristics anyway. This is why I gave the Tate example earlier, just because you just had him on and it's such a clear one for guys. It's like, what happened? People started dressing like him, talking like him, doing the same things as him. And this was a very big threat to mainstream, right? Because,
You think so?
well, if you have 10 million Andrew Tates walking around, it's going to be pretty difficult to control the society, right? So whether you want to argue if that's good or bad or not, it's a big threat to the system. So this is what's happening, right? He was hypnotizing them. They were emulating him, and they weren't conforming to modern society, right? That's a massive threat. So this is why the control, all of these mechanisms are put in place to stop people from doing that.
Yeah, people often talk about parasocial relationships, like they feel connected with Tate, but in reality, like there's a lot of, I think I saw this word in like a Substack article, like telesocial relationships, where people emulate the thing that they want to be like.
Yep.
But it seems like there's not a lot of superheroes to emulate, which I find interesting. Do you know what I mean by that? Like there's not a lot of people in culture that if you emulated them, you'd be like the strongest, smartest, best version of yourself.
Well, who's your favorite superhero?
I like the villains, but I'd say Batman. Yeah, I'd say Batman.
What about the Joker?
I'd say the Joker. Yeah, that's definitely the best one.
I could see you like what? No, we're going to this. What do you like about the Joker?
It's clever, smart, funny, ruthless.
Have you ever gone to a Halloween party as a Joker?
We were going to one year, but I dressed like Ty Lopez instead.
Knowledge. That's epic. But like, think about this, right? Because this is valuable. So smart, clever, the other words that you said, this is how you see yourself. Consciously or unconsciously. That's why you like it. Right? So notice this. No one's favorite superhero is Superman. Like almost nobody. Why? Because Superman is shown to be perfect. There's no flaws in him, which is unrelatable, which is why nobody likes it. People like Batman because he has that dark side to him. People like Spider-Man because he's like secretly kind of a dork, right? But then he gets these superpowers, so it gives people the hope that, oh, I can also do the same thing. And with all of the other superheroes, same with the Joker. He has maybe more flaws visibly. He's evil, he's the bad guy, whatever. But then probably there's part of you who likes that, right? Who likes to see yourself like that. It's like tantalizing. It feels good.
What's the most shocking thing you've hypnotized someone to do?
I've had people ask me to do shocking things. So I had a guy in Monaco last year ask me to hypnotize him to be gay. like legit wanted to pay me for it. That was one. I didn't do that
Did you
one.
hypnotize him to be gay?
I didn't, because it just goes against my morals and ethics, although I really thought it'd be hilarious to do.
But it's possible?
Yeah. Well, people are hypnotized to be gay all the time, right? Think about how many people now are gay or even transgender now versus 10 years ago. You can probably pull up a stat to support that. I don't know the number. It's a lot more people than it used to be. Why? Where did that influence come from?
1,000 different places? I'm not sure.
Yeah. But that's something that has happened. I want to you want something shocking?
Did you hypnotize your mom on FaceTime?
My auntie, sorry. My auntie.
How did you hypnotize her on FaceTime?
So my auntie, she's about 60 years old, and she'd been a smoker for her entire life since 13. So 47 years, if my math's correct. And smoking at this point was just part of her identity. It was part of her habitual system. She did it every single day. And she came to me because she saw what I was doing, and she was like, "Can you help me?" So I said, "Yeah, of course." Now she's in the UK. I was in Dubai at the time. So I just FaceTimed her and I said, "You want to quit smoking?" She said, "Yes." So I hypnotized her on FaceTime, and all I did was make her get a cigarette, put it to her mouth, and then I made her believe that that cigarette was rotting raw chicken breast. So much so that the smell of it, the taste of it was now what she associated with that. That was number one. And if that wasn't deep enough, then I made her just simply go to forward in her life to the point where she passed away due to the smoking, and then have her see her children's faces when she was passing away and associate all of that pain to the cigarette. It's like a little bit morbid, but you know, and she never smoked again.
She doesn't smoke anymore?
No.
That's wild, actually. And through FaceTime. Is that the most common thing that people come to you for? Is to stop addictions, or is it to build wealth? Is it to get their wife back? Like, what is it?
I mean, I'd say the most common in general hypnotherapy is probably like a habit or quitting smoking or something like that. Like I can do that stuff. It's fine. But it's not really my focus. What I'm really passionate about is I was an entrepreneur for 10 years first. I then created this company. It's called Conscious Entrepreneur. The mission of it, raise the collective consciousness of entrepreneurs. Why? Because entrepreneurs change the world, not governments, in my belief system. I believe it is entrepreneurs who create change. So if I can influence entrepreneurs in a positive way, it's fulfilling that mission. So the main thing that I do is basically help entrepreneurs who are doing something net positive into the world to become the absolute biggest and best version of themselves in their own definition. So whether that does mean making a lot more money, or whether that just means like being in much better shape, or whether that just means their self-concept, or whether that means, there was a guy who called Adam who came to me. He saw me on Instagram, I think, and he said, "You're really great. I've worked with this therapist. I know what my problems are." I'm like, okay, great. But do you still have them? Yeah. And so when I got into his problem, and this is one of the most common things people come to me for, they're already a successful person, they're motivated, but it really is, you would label it as procrastination or self-sabotage. And you'd be shocked and think, well, surely like a successful entrepreneur or billionaire doesn't have that. They have it the worst, because for him, in his specific situation, what happened is, I'll give a quick story. He became really successful in his business. He moved to Dubai, had this crazy life, and then people started copying what he did. There was one specific guy who copied him so closely that he also moved to Dubai. He also started the same business, did same building he lived in, same car, but he was doing a really shitty job as at what his business was, which was a coaching company. And so people started to hate this guy, get bad reviews, and it gave him a bad name. And through that association, he then kind of took that on and think, well, I don't want to do that. I'm not that kind of person. I started doing this for good reasons. So he started to do less and less and less, and he just could not get himself to do the work. He even stopped working out. He was in great shape before. And his whole identity kind of just like became a shell of himself. And so when I hypnotized him, all I did was help him to delete the trauma associated to that and just replace it with who he really was. Took 30 minutes. He left, got into his Lambo, drove home to his girlfriend, now wife, got 3 speeding tickets, picked up flowers for her for the first time in a year, gave them to her because he realized he wasn't showing up for her either. And then he scaled his business times 5. And these are like the kind of things that people don't want to admit that are their problems because they think, how can I struggle with this? Oh, I must just be lazy. What does that mean about me? But it's never to do with being lazy. It's never to do with willpower. It's never to do with discipline. It's just because something is blocking you from being who you truly want to be. It's either going to be a fear, a limiting belief, or a trauma. Those are the only 3 things that will block you. Fear, limiting belief, trauma. So the thing I use is called FTL deletion. It just stands for those 3 things. Once you remove that, the block goes and you can just do the thing.
So what do you think is more important, the replacement or the removal?
The removal is first. It has to be in that order because if I try and fill this bottle up and it's already full, it's just going to overflow, right? I have to empty the bottle first to put something in. So the removal oftentimes can still create the outcome, but putting in the new identity is just going to be what makes it fast.
How do you go about removing that block?
So this is where I use the hypnosis. So the FTL deletion process that I do, it's basically just I take you into trance and then I have you go back to the origin of that block, which is step 2. But in order to do that correctly, you have to be in a state where you're fully relaxed and disassociated, right? Once you go back to what that block is, then you can basically go through it and relive it. So if you think about it like this, what's the fastest way to overcome a phobia of snakes? See a snake, right? I put people through that so that they can face whatever their block is head on. And then it takes about 20 to 30 seconds to just release it. Now, how do you release it? I'll zoom in for a moment. Let's say you're in a really stressful situation. You're really fearful about, let's say this whole podcast gets deleted. I'm not putting that out there, okay? How are you going to feel in that moment, right? Is your mind going to be really calm and peaceful, or is there going to be a lot of thoughts racing through it? A lot of thoughts, right? How's your body going to be feeling? Is it going to be relaxed, like you're laying on a beach, or is it going to be tight and tense? It's going to be tight and tense. How's your breathing going to be? Is it going to be relaxed and slow and deep, or is it going to be shallow in the chest? Okay, so these are the 3 physiological examples of what somebody is doing. By doing the opposite of those, it undoes the trauma because those physiological things is what you experienced when the block happened, whenever it was, right? Related to childhood, related to the past. So simply just by facing it and doing the opposite, it releases it. And it literally does not take talking about it. It doesn't take years of therapy. It literally just takes a few seconds. And so this is why the whole therapy thing honestly pisses me off. I don't think therapists are bad people, but I just think they're using tools that are so outdated and they're so unconscious to what actually works. It aggravates me because I see every day people come to me like, I tried this therapy, and what does it do? It reinforces who they don't want to be because this happened to me, that happened to me, that happened to me. They're running that script in that old story. It aggravates me. All I care about is, what do you want? Okay, you want that? Okay, cool. What's stopping you? This. Let's remove it. A few minutes. Okay, now let's focus on where you want to go.
That's fascinating. Yeah, so if you're picturing a snake and you picture your physical reaction to a snake, do the opposite and associate that with snakes, then it makes you unfearful.
I can even give you a basic version of it now if you want to try it.
Sure.
So this is an NLP technique that I teach to the billionaires that I work with, and also I use every single day. So close your eyes. Anybody else can do this as well. This is only going to take about 60 seconds. Imagine something that you are fearful of, or something bad that happened, something you're avoiding. It could be in the past or something you're anxious about in the future. Have you got something?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, imagine that you're looking at it on a screen, like a movie screen, 10 inches in front of your face. You see it? Now see it playing out. Now, all I want you to do is just put a red border around that screen and now start to move that screen out far and away from you. So it goes a mile away, 10 miles away, 100 miles away, 1,000 miles away. It gets smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller until it gets so small that, just like an old movie, that screen goes black and white. And then loads of squiggly lines go over it. And the further away it goes, the harder it becomes to associate with. And you remember to forget the emotion associated to that event. Notice if you try and bring up that uncomfortable feeling, now it's gone and it's been let go of. Notice your body naturally relaxes. Notice your breathing moves down into your stomach. Notice everything slows down. And as you just take one deep breath in, and all the way out, Notice that it's gone. And now, if you imagine a new screen right in front of you, you're going to see whatever that thing is going really well. Maybe you have a different meaning now. Maybe it's clearer. You make it bigger. You make it brighter. You make it so clear in your mind's eye that you know it's already done. You can see and feel maybe sensations in the body associated with it. And now whenever you try and think back to that old thing, you're now going to feel this. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes.
It's pretty effective. Huh.
So this is just something that people can just do themselves. Like literally, if you just focus on this part and you just want to take something practical from today, just do this. I do this every single day. And you'll be shocked at how quickly you can just change your association to something. And obviously you can go way deeper and I can do it for 10 minutes and there's a lot more depth to it. But like just that, anyone can do.
Right. On who this might work for, what's a sign that someone's easy to manipulate? Or maybe a sign that someone's easy to hypnotize?
I think the wording's important to start with because most people think that being easily hypnotizable means they're easy to manipulate. And there is some truth to that, but not entirely. So for example, I never believed I could be hypnotized. Most people listening to this probably don't see themselves as a hypnotizable person. The reason they see themselves like that is because they consciously think, oh, that means I can easily be manipulated. And I thought the same thing too, until I started working with these billionaires and these athletes. And I started to realize, wait a second, these guys are so open to it. These guys are actually the most hypnotizable people. Why? Because they're open-minded. So to get to any point of real success in your life, you have to go against the grain, right? It's like Einstein's definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. You have to do something different. So the most successful people I've ever worked with are the most hypnotizable, but it starts with that mindset of it, okay? So, like you can look at things called like Chinese face mapping, where you can look at like lines and wrinkles on the face. And if you have a lot of wrinkles on your face, then you could argue someone's less hypnotizable. If you have a smoother face like you do, you're more hypnotizable. I'm hypnotizable. But everyone is hypnotizable anyway, because we're already being hypnotized. It's just that there's different degrees of how easily someone can go into hypnosis. But the more you do it, the easier it becomes. Actually, it's a skill that I believe everybody should learn. And the easiest way to do it is there is a window when you go to bed every single night for 5 minutes, okay? Just before you're about to fall asleep, but you're still conscious, where you're capable of self-hypnosis. That is when you're in a dreamlike hypnotic state. All you have to do is just listen to something that is basically speaking the reality that you want to hear. Okay, you could self-record something. Or if it's me, I'll obviously make audios for my clients and you'll just listen to it. If you use that window just before you fall asleep, it will create a program in your mind. So whilst you're in sleep, it will run that program again and again, and it will subconsciously make you believe that that reality has already happened. And so that's the easiest way to self-hypnotize yourself. There's another way as well, which is with a suggestibility test. So this is how to see how hypnotizable you are, okay? People can follow along if they want to try this. So just if you look at my eyes, if I look up with my eyes, you can see that they're fluttering a lot, right? Now, immediately I'm going into hypnosis and my eyes just literally wanted to close, right? It's like, even to open my eyes right now is really hard. I'm not faking it. Like I can do it, but you can see how much they're fluttering, right? This is already taking me into a trance. If I now start speaking what I want in my mind out loud or listening to something in this state, I'm already in a more suggestible state simply because I'm now more in a trance, just like this. So this is something that, and even as I come out right now, it's like, well, coming back to the reality, right? So this is something anyone can do. And you're doing it anyway, because the words that you're saying in your mind every single second of every single day are a form of self-hypnosis. So this is why the removal and the deletion part is so important, because most of the time what you're speaking in your mind is negative thoughts, because your mind is wired for survival, which is looking out for threat. But if you can start to delete those thoughts, let them go, naturally your mind will just become more neutral and empty. And then you can replace it with the things that you want. And the more you can do that, the more hypnotizable and suggestible you'll become, the faster you can create change. And the faster that feedback loop will happen, because now you get reality showing you the change, and then your belief just goes up and it just becomes like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Right. Can you brainwash someone to forget about their ex?
So I didn't realize this until I started doing what I'm doing, but a lot of people would come to me with the pain point of, I'm still thinking about my ex. I can't get them out of my head. And I was on a trip recently in Cape Town earlier this year, and I was at a dinner, and this young South African girl was sitting next to me at the table. And she's like 21, 22 years old. And she said, can you hypnotize me to forget about my ex? And honestly, I'd never tried it up until that point. And so I was just asking her some questions. So I asked her, well, how long has it been since you've been with him? 3 years. I was like, okay. And you're still thinking about it? Yes. If you had to estimate how much time per day do you believe you're thinking about him? She said 4 hours a day. Now, I don't know if it was actually 4 hours, but it was a lot of time. So if you imagine what's going on there internally, she's constantly reliving that because it's giving her certain emotions, right? And it's creating that attachment. That's why the attachment piece is so important. So she asked me, can you hypnotize me? And honestly, I just felt a little bit sorry for her. So I was like, sure, well, let's try. And I took her through a hypnosis where, honestly, similar to kind of what we did with the screens, with a few extra steps, that just made her disassociate, not just from him, but the emotions associated to what she experienced while she was with him. Because it's never about the person. It's about the feeling. And it's not even about the feelings they give you. It's about the feelings you feel when they are there. So love is a crazy thing, because you think that you experience love with this person, or this person gives you love and you feel this amazing feeling of love, but it's not actually what's happening. What's happening is this person is making you stimulate the emotion inside of yourself that was already there. It's completely self-generated. It comes from within. It's just that when they're around, it opens up more. You feel it more, right? So it's a kind of important distinction to make. So once I helped her realize that, she was also able to realize that, oh, wait, the love wasn't actually from him. It was in her all along. And then through the hypnosis, she was able to just detach from that. And actually, one thing I'll use is a bit of humor in there and help her to realize like just how silly the situation was once she sees all the bad sides about it. Because love can be blinding, right? When you can see not just the positives, but the negatives and see them, you realize how silly it is. And also humor is a powerful tool to heal, to let go when you just are laughing, right? Having a good time. So yeah, it took us about 8 minutes. It's literally on my YouTube channel. I did a vlog and I showed it, hypnotizing her. And this is the crazy part. I asked her after, how do you feel now when you think about him? And she just said, think about who? And honestly, that terrified me a little bit, because 10 minutes before, she was telling me how she was thinking about him 4 hours a day. So it's never about the person. It's never about the thing. It's just your association and the real deep emotion that it gives you. If you can overcome that, then whatever the thing is, whether it's food, it's just for an emotion. Whether it's an addiction, it's just for an emotion or feeling a certain way, or love or porn or anything. It's just for an emotion.
You didn't remove the positive associations with the guy. You made her see them differently. Like, did you make her see any more negative associations with him?
Great question, because you can't. This is why manifestation stuff doesn't work, is because you're essentially saying like, I'm positive, I'm happy, and you're just trying to see the good side, but like that's not really the full truth. What I help her to do is see both sides of the story, clarity. What we want is just the truth. If we can see reality for what it really is, both good and bad, then it becomes easy to make a decision, right? So when you're blindly in love with someone and you're just together and it's the honeymoon period, they ask you to take out the trash. I'll be happy to take out the trash. They ask you for this. I'll be happy to do this, right? You're overjoyed to do it. All you want to do is give to them. But then as time goes by, that emotion starts to go down a little bit. Those chemicals start to go down. Then suddenly you're like, oh, did this person always snore? Why she keep asking me to take out the trash? right? And it annoys you. It gets on you, right? She didn't change. She was exactly like that the whole time. It's just that your perception, due to the emotion of love that you were feeling, was making you see only the positive side. So what I helped her to do was just see both sides, but to see it, to see the negative, she could have said those negatives before, but she wouldn't have associated to them because she was still blinded by the positive, if that makes sense. I know we're getting a little bit technical right now, but like basically like once you can have a balanced perspective, then you can easily see both sides, the good and the bad, and then it becomes easier to then move forward.
So once you see the truth of both sides, you just decide which one you want to go with?
Yeah.
Or is, okay.
It's literally just like, you will just make the decision that you actually just feel is best for you, which if you can see clearly in something, the way you're wired is in your own self-interest. So you're going to most likely make the right decision for you.
Can you hypnotize someone to fall in love with you?
So if you imagine being on a first date and you imagine we're sitting across the table, we're looking into each other's eyes, we're having a deep conversation, and we're feeling all of these emotions, we're stimulated, the whole world disappears around us. It's just you and I at this table. We're fully focused on one another. We're hypnotizing each other.
Right.
So absolutely, yes. Actually, love is hypnosis because you're actually going into an altered state, right? Hypnosis is just when you go from being external to internal. So you're feeling all of these very strong emotions, which is hypnosis. And so then if you were to suggest, hey, let's get married, you're going to be highly suggestible and you're much more likely to say yes. Why? Because if the other person feels the same, you're going to do it.
That's interesting. You're saying that everything comes from internal state. And like if you think that an emotion comes from external state, then that's hypnosis, essentially.
Everything comes from your internal state first. It's just things will stimulate that internal state differently. So if we get along well, then you and I are going to feel good to some degree in each other's presence. If we don't, we're going to feel bad as a really simple thing. So that's external stimuli making that internal state happen in a certain way, right? So for most people, they stay trapped in the belief system that the outside world is the only way to change their inside world. So that's why they'll overeat, gamble, get addicted to social media, because those outside things are giving what it seems like emotions from outside in. But really what it's doing is it's helping them temporarily be distracted from the bad things that they feel that are already there and temporarily feel something good, whether it's a sugar rush, whether it's a high from whatever, social media or something like that.
Right.
So it's kind of just like, it's such a strong illusion for so many people that they just get trapped in that belief system of thinking that the outside world runs me. And this is why most people do not want to sit by themselves and why they'd rather be electrocuted than sit by themselves. Because it then means that we have to face what's really inside of us, which for a lot of people, particularly as they get older and more aware and these things build up, because if you don't address these things, they build up, they compound, they get worse. Compounding works positively and negatively. And I've had the real privilege now of working with really young people, like kids up to 70-year-olds, and seeing that whole plethora of experience. And I'd be an idiot not to recognize what the patterns are. And they do build as you get older. So one of the things that I really want for people and why I love spreading this message is hopefully so it can reach younger people. So that if they can start doing this stuff now, then man, like the compounding they experience throughout their whole life is magnificent. And not just the success stuff, like the internal stuff as well.
I'm pretty hungry right now. Do you think hypnosis is more effective than Ozempic?
So I'm a little bit hungry as well. So there is a chemical effect to that, but most of it is actually psychological. And actually, I would assert that most people who are overweight is purely because of their mindset and their belief systems. Because the reason why people eat is ultimately to feel a certain amount of comfort. And even if you think about it like this whole time I've been pointing to emotions. I'm pointing here, right? Where is that? It's like in their body. So quite literally, and this is only anecdotal, so maybe there's studies to prove this, I don't know, but you feel emotions here. When you put food inside of yourself, it's quite literally filling up the void where these emotions are with food, right? Again, this is just from my own experience, but that is why most people will overeat. Actually, if you've ever done a fast or you've ever done some kind of experience where you haven't eaten for a period of time, have you ever done that before?
Yeah, I'd say so.
How did you feel after the first few days of doing it?
I haven't done it for multiple days. I think I did it like a day and a half, something like that.
Okay.
Just more mental clarity, I'd say was my main thing.
Was the first part really tough?
I would say so. And then it gets easier.
Yeah. I would say that's usually how it is for most people, right? There's that initial discomfort because you're breaking a pattern. And then once you get past that pattern, you're then free of it,
Mm.
right? And then once you're free of it, it's like the most liberating feeling ever because you're no longer chained to this outside thing giving you something. So whenever I help someone with losing weight, it's just purely just psychological. It's just where they get their comfort from, their emotions from. And if you can realize, and again, it's not manipulating them to feel bad about food. It's just helping them realize the truth of how they actually feel about food. Because you don't actually like poisoning yourself with bad food. It maybe feels good in the moment, but you know after it's not. So you know it's not, but you're just, the emotion is so strong that it's almost like you can't help yourself. That's why sugar is just as addictive as cocaine and why there's sugar in everything because it's so addictive. They figured out that a long time ago. So
Do you think the consciousness, like your consciousness and your beliefs, identity, etc., affect like the chemical reactions in your body?
I would strongly say yes to that.
Do you think, just to push this to the limits a bit, do you think you could hypnotize me to have a heart attack?
If you want to know the real answer, most likely yes. Because if you look at what is happening when someone is having a heart attack on a physiological level, there are certain components to that of how fast is the heart beating, what's going on in the blood vessels. Like all of these things are very controllable by the mind. And if you think about what's actually happening to someone when they have a heart attack, usually it's something very shocking or create some big event has happened, which has created that to happen. So I wouldn't see any reason why you couldn't do it in hypnosis. But let's not do that one.
You're saying with a heart attack specifically, like because the heart rate increases, maybe your, I don't know if it's your ventricles or your vesicles like constrict. Like how do you actually put someone in that state? Is it just imagining another state that's similar to it and amplifying it?
That's one way. Yeah. So if you could have somebody, I mean, do you know anyone that's ever had a heart attack?
Yeah.
Do you know what led to it when they had it?
I would assume probably overeating, but it could probably was psychological as well.
Yeah, I mean, look, overeating for sure can be a massive reason why people have it later. But then there's also people who have heart attacks when they absolutely should not have heart attacks. For example, when they do drugs,
Right.
right? What's the drug doing? It's having an effect on their physiological state. Usually, it's just increasing their heart rate so much that it becomes unsustainable, right?
Hmm.
If somebody was in such a, say, fearful state for so long, so extreme, is it possible that their heart could keep going until they have a heart attack and it shuts off? Yeah.
Have you hypnotized a homeless person before? It's okay if not. It's a good place to do it.
Yeah, I mean, there's plenty out here. I mean, it reminds me of a story. It wasn't a homeless person, but this was also in South Africa. But last year, I had a barber, and he's a 21-year-old guy, South African, great at what he does, but he was addicted to weed.
Mm.
And he basically told me that he really wanted to start his own business because he could see like all these rich white people coming over and he knew that he could make much more money cutting their hair if he did his own business instead of working in a barbershop. So I said to him, "What's stopping you?" He said, "I don't have the money. I can't buy a bike and I can't buy the equipment." And I said, "Okay, well, like, what's this weed thing about?" And he said, "Oh yeah, I have this addiction to weed." I was like, "How much do you spend on weed every day?" And it was the amount of money he was spending on weed every day. We figured out within 1 month, he could have all of the stuff he needed to start a business. So as he was cutting my hair, I just conversationally hypnotized him and he stopped smoking weed, like within 20 minutes. And then now he just sends me updates all the time. He's like, I just bought this new shitty old bike, and now I'm going around. I just bought this hair equipment, and he's gone and done it now. So
You hypnotized your barber to stop smoking weed while he was cutting your hair. Is that
yeah,
That's crazy, man. Damn, that makes me want to learn hypnosis.
I want to do more stuff like just to help people, like just for good, just to give back, right? Like whether it's in like audiences or crowds or people who, you know, can't like afford to work with me in that capacity. I just want to find a way to just give to more people like that. Because I love doing it. It's just because the impact of it's insane. I just need to figure out like the best way to actually do to start that. But whenever I can, if someone, you know, if they're a good person, I can help them. I'll do whatever I can to. There's tons of stories like that.
Yes, I mean, from my experience with hypnotism, it sounds like the government should probably have a program for veterans to work with hypnotists in a
100%.
subsidized way. That's actually really fascinating. But on NLP, and I know you've referenced it a few times over the course of this podcast, it essentially means neuro-linguistic programming. Now, you said you were greatly inspired by Tony Robbins and your personal mentor, Richard Bandler, who's the co-founder of NLP. Um, what's the one thing he did in front of you that you still can't fully explain? Or maybe you just were shocked in the moment?
I actually made a note of this like 24 hours ago about NLP. Let me see if I can find it on here.
As an aside, researching Richard Bandler specifically 2 days ago, one thing I saw in his work was instead of saying, I would love to start a business, but I don't have enough money, just say things like, I don't have enough money, but I would love to start a business. And if
Mm,
you do that, then it gives you a reason to keep going, you know,
yeah,
because it puts it at the end. That was one little gem I
that's
caught from
super
his
smart.
stuff.
That's honestly super smart. Um, that's also recency bias,
Right. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because it's like whatever the last thing is, you're much more likely to do it, even if it's not what you actually want to do.
Right.
So one of the persuasion tricks I've learned with NLP is on the topic of recency bias, right? The second word is the thing that people will always associate to. So if I was to say, where were you last week at this time? You're going to think back to it. Now, if I said, oh, why don't you just remember to forget where you were? I've said the opposite, but your mind's only going to forget. So what it's going to do is it's going to just remove the thing out of your mind. So if you ever want to use this in a day-to-day situation, let's say you want to kind of move on from a topic, or you're in an altercation or something's happened, if you just simply use the word forget and you say it like that, as in NLP it's called an embedded command. You've probably heard that before. It just means you're embedding a word into a sentence. Just by saying the word forget, the mind literally will just pop out of the mind. So you can use this. I'll give an example of when I used this recently. So last year I was on a trip to Lake Como with my fiance, and we got a rental car, and I'm driving this thing. On the way out, I scratch it on the side of the mountain. There's these really tight roads, and I'm like, whatever, I'll just sort it out on the way back. Now, on the way back, I'm running late, I'm on low fuel, and if I don't go straight, then I'm going to miss my flight, and I'm going somewhere next. So I realized that I need to get out of this rental ticket. So I can tell you exactly what NLP and hypnosis techniques I used and break it down frame by frame. I'll paint the picture first. I drive the car back. I go into the car park in the airport. Now, what happens is when you go to return the rental car, there's going to be a guy. He's going to ask you some questions. You're going to give back the keys. He's going to check the car. So the first thing I did was pattern interrupt. I know that I need to break his script because he's in, what's the word when he's in NPC mode, essentially, right? So usually what's going to happen is he's going to say, oh, hi, can I have the keys, please? So immediately I do something different. I go to shake his hand. Now, how often do you shake the hand of the rental car company guy first? Very not often, but a step above that as well is I first of all intentionally missed and went towards his stomach. So now that's another pattern interrupt. Then now he's already like a little bit caught off guard. Then I grabbed his hand like this. So now that's just another weird thing. Then I turned him around 180 degrees. This is called motion tracking. So now I'm basically taking his field of vision, right? Because now he's not looking just at me, he's here. Now I can basically do whatever I want. But then what I did is I had my Google Maps out, And I just said, oh, hey, thanks so much for helping me today. So I'm assuming what I already want by planning that in his mind. And then I said, uh, is this the right terminal I need to go to? And I have my maps on. So now this is in his face, right up close to him. When your vision goes in and out, that also puts you in a trance as well. Just another hypnotic technique. And so he just says, well, yes, because that's the question I asked him. So I said, thank you so much. I put the keys in his hand and I said, good to go. And he said, yeah, good to go. And I walked off with Maggie. We had part of this on video. And we're just walking and I'm like, don't look back. Let's just go. Let's just go. And he was just standing there for about another 30 seconds. And I got an invoice from them the next day for no charge. So like, don't do this at home because you may get punched in the face by someone if you don't do this properly. But these are all things that you can do if you want to influence people, which is basically you just got to think, okay, how can I get somebody breaking their pattern of what they would usually do to be into my frame? And then as soon as that's happened, you can pretty much influence them in any way that you want.
That's fascinating. It's just super micro, but when you use like hypnotic speech, are you looking here? Or are you looking here?
Left eye.
So here?
Yeah.
Why?
This is where we form a deeper connection. So if I look at you in your left eye, it creates more of a like emotional connection between us. Whereas I look in your right eye, it's a bit more practical, a bit more that side. Maybe it's the right side, the side of the brain, maybe. So left eye is going to form more of a connection. Why'd you ask about the
That's
middle?
fascinating. I think I remember Richard Bandler saying something about looking at the middle or looking like past their consciousness almost.
Yeah, so that's going to be more trance-like. So if I look at you like here, it's already like the vision is already kind of impaired, so it's a little bit more trance-like by doing that. So that would do that as well. It's also kind of a pattern interrupt, right? If I look at you here, and also when the eyes go up, that's also going to induce trance. So you remember in that suggestibility test that we did where I was looking up like this, immediately my eyes feel heavy, so they want to close, which if your eyes close, you're going to be more in a trance.
Right. What do you think is the biggest mass hypnosis happening to society right now?
The biggest thing that the masses are being hypnotized for right now overall is fear. It's to stay in a state of fear, whether that is fear of there's this war happening, whether it's fear of there's this virus, whether it's fear of there's going to be this natural disaster, or when the aliens come down and then the next fear. It's ultimately fear because when we're in a fear state, you're much more easy to be manipulated and controlled. But here's the interesting thing. People are waking up. Go back to 2019, the virus, that worked, right? It controlled the entire population for a period of time. But then what happened? People started to question things. They started to ask why. That's why the most powerful thing you can do is question and ask why. Then, do you remember not that long ago, there was monkeypox? Do you remember not that long ago, there was like hentavirus or something? What happened with that? Doesn't seem to be here right now. So this is why I'm so optimistic about the world right now, because even though there's more crazy stuff than ever, people truly are waking up more than ever. This is why I really respect you and what you're doing, asking these questions in the way that you do, because it is awakening the world. It's making people ask difficult questions, different questions, unusual questions. It's making me think a lot. And it's also making everybody else think a lot. And ultimately, when people can start to think for themselves, that's when the world changes. This is why I love this platform, because you can just speak fully, freely, and get new ideas.
I love that. Yeah, I think that the biggest lie is definitely it's fear, that there is external fear and that there's internal lack of love or enoughness. My favorite thing you've said in this whole podcast, and I just kind of want to give you a chance to expand upon it, is that it's such a basic question, but like, what is your secret to loving yourself?
The biggest thing people get wrong about love is they think it comes from outside instead of inside. So, tell the story of when I was heartbroken when I was 18 years old. And because of that pain of losing that love from this person, I closed off. I said, all right, I'm just going to focus on myself. I'm going to just do my thing. I'm going to become better. And then after a period of years of realizing that didn't work, I had to figure out, okay, well, where do I get this love from? Because I tried dating more people, didn't work. I tried doing acts of self-love, didn't work. I tried getting better, it didn't work. The only thing that worked for me, and this is true story, is I would sit alone in my apartment and I would sit on my chair and I would just literally focus on my chest right here. And I would just try to feel something. And it was like nothing. And I would try to just somehow stimulate something inside of me. I try and think about my little nephew who I love, or my parents, or things that I loved. And for literally months, I felt nothing until one day I felt something that was about the size of an acorn here. This emotion inside of me, sitting by myself alone in my apartment. And I felt this feeling. And I was like, what the heck is this? That was love. I was able to open up my heart to feel love. And this was such a shocking moment for me because it had nothing to do with anybody else. And this started to become my proof for that love comes from within instead of without. So I started to do this more. I would focus on expanding this feeling more, just feeling it more. And I would start to feel good. I'd start to feel happy. Suddenly, like my life started to change. People started to give me different opportunities. Good things started to happen. The people I would attract started to be a totally different type of person. People who were more just like, just like genuine people who just like had a good heart as well, who like had similar value systems, all because I was feeling this inside of myself. So I started to see that it's not that I need to get love from the outside. It's that if I feel it from the inside, then everything I want from the outside will just come to me. And this, if there is any truth to manifestation, I believe this is it. It's if you can experience the thing that you want internally, it will send out a frequency that calls that back in because like attracts like.
Right. That's an interesting one. A guest in the past, Chase Hughes, who's familiar with hypnosis, said like living with an open heart was uh, like the key to most things. And it's interesting because if you're closed off, you can't accept any love from the world. Last question here. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
So most people understand that your thoughts shape your reality, right? What you think about is what will become. But what most people don't realize is it's not actually just your thoughts, it's your emotions. And your emotions are really the primary driver of action, which determines your outcomes. So if you can align both your thoughts and your emotions by becoming more in tune with this, then everything that you want will be on the other side of that. Does that make sense?
And how do you align your thoughts with your emotions? Simply.
It starts by getting quiet. The truest answer is not a quick one. It starts by spending time by yourself without stimulus to realize what you actually feel about what's going on. And if you do that, the chances are it will start by being a tumultuous experience because you'll realize how much is actually going on inside of you. So if you're somebody who doesn't think that you feel that much, it's just because you're not letting yourself be aware of what you're feeling. But if you can go through that and you can start also emotionally regulating and becoming the version of yourself that you want to be, not just thinking that way, you'll become who you want to be.
Beautiful. Well, everyone, this has been your guest, Ebrahim Turner. This is the Jack Neel Podcast. I appreciate you coming on, brother.
Likewise.